Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Meredith Lego, and I'm doing a series of videos on Ascension science. And a lot of the content that I'm bringing forward, I've been able to channel from other beings in sort of other dimensional planes of existence or densities, and I'm bringing forward that information to you now. So as I was thinking about the theme for this particular video, I had several sessions that I did within maybe a 2-week period of time where I was channeling information where I was asking a question and I got very, very short answers back. So what I realized is that there was one common theme among all of them. It has to do with a better understanding of how the quantum field works and the quantum dynamics. So I'm going to go through that a little bit and then get into the subject of the questions that I asked and the information that I received that helps us, again, better understand the ascension process. And the general topics of those questions have to do with what's called quantum convergence charge. So that's going to be one topic. Another is going to be about jumping timelines. And then the third is about downloading information from the field. So before getting into the short answers that I got back, I wanted to give you, again, talk about the quantum mechanics a little bit more because it's so fundamental to the understanding of ascension. In fact, the two very much go hand in hand, and who would have thought like quantum physics was going to be important in terms of the development of consciousness, but they really are. So let me go to my notes really fast and able to explain this at a very high level. So quantum itself, when I first learned about it, I always thought of quantum as being something very, very, very small. But essentially quantum is a discrete quantity of energy proportioned in magnitude to the frequency of the radiation it represents. So again, there comes in that word frequency again. So again, it's a discrete quantity of energy. So everything in the world that we know is made up of energy. That's all it is. That's all we are is energy. And it's proportional in magnitude to the frequency of the radiation it represents. Sorry, I'm going to take a quick drink of water. Now, when it comes to quantum mechanics, it's a branch of physics which deals with physical phenomena or quantum energy at the atomic and subatomic level. So again, it does talk about tiny material, providing a mathematical description of the dual particle-like and wave-like behavior and interactions between energy and matter. Now, this is important because while we're dealing with small stuff, atom and subatomic levels, when you start to get into understanding and starting to see the field a little bit more, let's say within your inner sight, there's material you can see, and then there's material that you can't see, also called antimatter. So it gets described here as energy. We tend to not always see energy unless we're moving, because that's then kinetic energy that's in motion, so to speak, as opposed to potential energy. So they talk about the dual particle wave-like behavior. So the dual particle, again, is the matter and the antimatter portion of it. And essentially at the subatomic level, and this was described in the very first videos that I posted on YouTube, starting to share about this information, because when I was getting it from my source, Ascended Master Hilarion, he actually started with me talking about the quantum field and what that is. And we talked about the fact that you've got minute particles, and since then I've learned different name terminology for them. So they're kind of particum, but they're very, very, very tiny particles that essentially pop in and out of matter, in and out of the field. And it actually happens because essentially particles at this level also have a torus field that essentially goes around them, and within that, so a torus field is kind of like a donut of energy, and they're kind of funneling energy in and out and around them, and in the center of them even is a 0 point, and essentially through that 0 point they're kind of phasing in and out of reality, and that's essentially what's happening. So we have a whole bunch of molecules, like little tiny subatomic particles within our body that are phasing in and out of reality. We can't see it, obviously, but that's essentially what's happening. And so that happens, and it's interacted or interrelated to the frequency at which that particular subatomic particle is really vibrating at. So the two go hand in hand, and essentially they create a wave-like pattern or behavior. So the other thing that I think is really important, that and how it ties to Ascension, is that I've always talked through with you in past videos that Ascension is really the ascensions of consciousness. Okay, and as we start to ascend our consciousness, we're essentially and you're doing it very much as a multi-dimensional being. You're bringing higher forms of consciousness into all dimensions within time and space, essentially. So Ascension is another definition for it, and I'm pulling this off of a great source that I came across after I started channeling, called the Ascension Glossary. And so if you haven't found it, I highly encourage you to go to that. And I want to give kudos to Lisa Renee, who's invested a ton of her personal time into developing out this tool. But Ascension, she describes, is the complex quantum mechanics governing the movement of consciousness or intelligent energy through time and space in the past, present, and future. And so quantum theory and ascension theory are highly intermeshed and interrelated. Both are heavily disputed, obviously, and because the more that we know about this, the more that we can be controlled, so to speak. So that, the more that you understand this, the more liberty and freedom that you actually provide yourself and your consciousness in your own growth process. Less ability you are to be kind of manipulated through fear and victim programming, so to speak. So with that, that's why understanding quantum mechanics is so important. And I'm going to refer to a little picture here in my book before I actually get into the questions that I asked in these particular sessions. Now, I didn't print this out in advance, so I'm going to show you something that comes out of the book that I published a year and a half ago. And I apologize if it's very small, but what you see here is an example of a torus field, if you will, of energy. And so you've got a central point right there that is what's called the 0 point in the field of this particular, being unit or subparticle particle unit, if you will. And what Hilarion, who just Ascended Master Hilarion, who provided this information to me, so he pushed this image towards me and essentially described that at each side of this sort of torus field, you've got a couple of holes that are going on, so vortexes. On the one side, you have a black hole. On the other side, you have a white hole. And each of them carry different sort of properties with them, in the sense that one is pushing energy out and it's very electrical, and the other one is absorbing energy in, and it's very magnetic in its property. And that actually ties to the concept of feminine and male energy, not to be confused with the gender, just that feminine energy tends to be more magnetic and pull in frequencies and energies, and male tends to push out energy, so to speak, and sort of action the impulse or the information codes that you get, then you action them by putting them into movement. So those two things go together, and essentially one can essentially be more antimatter, and one can be matter. So that's the one thing that I just kind of wanted to show you. By the way, before we move on, if you're interested, I include this in the description, but this happens to be the book if you're interested in getting more information on that. So it's called The Science of Ascension, and you should be able to find that on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or something like that. So with that backdrop, let me get into the topics that came up around quantum mechanics. So there wasn't a question that I necessarily asked for the first topic, but I was thinking it, and I, in this particular case, received the information from Ascended Master Hilarion, and a flood of information came in, so I didn't even have a question that I had written down. But he basically said that quantum convergence charge is a gateway portal. So what I was curious about was kind of different ways that the ascension process occurs. And at the time, I was curious about the concept of portals and gateways as being more maybe manufactured sources of ascension. So essentially, you've got almost like what you'd think of in the movie. You've got like a portal that's, got streams of energy, or you've got sort of a stargate, which is very much like what you might see in the movies. And essentially, it's a way to sort of, move your body or your consciousness from one sort of time-space vector to another time-space vector, possibly in a different location, so to speak. And essentially, that's what ascension can be, or it could be the process of kind of going within and starting to kind of morph your consciousness. And I was curious about all those dynamics and how they play out. And in this particular case, he said there's something that actually does go on. It's called quantum convergence charge, and it is a gateway portal. Now, as you'll find out, it's actually something that happens within. So it's not like a manufactured, like external ley line gate or a portal that you might find on the earth. He says that as light funnels up the core of the body along the spine, it and the cellular etheric blueprint is pulled up into the portal at high velocity. It stops in the void of the 0 point. Go into the vortex to the other side of antimatter, circle through. You've practiced this before and you've done it already. So that was something he was personally saying to me. But essentially, it was kind of cryptic. But the way that I interpreted this particular message is that you're building up a lot of energy, so to speak. You're building up, you're creating a lot of light, because he talks about it as a light funnel. You're building up a lot of energy, and essentially you create almost like a portal, a gateway portal almost within you. So if you kind of think the fact that every single being from the subatomic level all the way up to the size of a galaxy essentially has the ability of funneling energy around them in the form of a torus field. So again, you've got a donut of energy that's going around you. We generate it through the electromagnetic frequencies that emanate from our brain and from our heart. So that's kind of going out. And he's essentially saying that you're building and you're creating enough light, and it's kind of coming up from the central spine, so the central core of your body. It's coming up, and it essentially pushes it and the cellular etheric blueprint, which is more of your energy body, up into a portal at very, very high velocity. So it's almost like a pushing up of energy. And then when it happens, it stops at the void, or that 0 point that I showed you on that particular graph. And then it goes into a vortex on the other side as antimatter. So that was pretty interesting as one potential. I guess this could be, the sort of going into ascension and possibly like traveling through, traveling into higher densities or harmonics, if you will, of densities, but you're actually doing it within through your internal portals that you have, within your own body and your own chakra system. So that was an interesting answer. So the second question, or the second topic that came up that has to do with quantum mechanics, was one that I asked on how can I hop timelines. So I know that I've done it in the past. I sense when I've done it, but I'm trying to understand, like, how do you do more prescriptive ownership, or like you want to hop a timeline, like how do you do this? I'm just kind of curious. He hasn't given me a lot of information on this, but in this particular case, he did say the molecules in the body vibrate at certain frequencies. Frequency matches the timeline. Intention and vibration are also required. Your consciousness jumps to different timelines based on your vibration. So that's really key because, again, it comes back to the concept of vibration. So once again, quantum is discrete and quantity of energy proportional in magnitude to the frequency of the radiation it represents. So in this particular case, there could be other timelines that are playing out of you, like you have many probable timelines. And like as an incarnate soul, your station of identity as whoever you are with the name that you have and your kind of station of life or whatever it is, you've got, several probability playouts of what that looks like. And essentially what you're doing is that you're taking your consciousness, you're sort of using it within that internal process that I just talked about. You're matching your vibrational frequency in some ways to a different timeline, and you're essentially plopping your consciousness, your awareness consciousness into that other timeline, into that other scenario. And it may not seem different for you, but that's essentially what's going on, or what he says is essentially going on. So the molecules in your body vibrate at certain frequencies. Your frequency matches the timeline. Intention and vibration are also required. So your consciousness jumps to different timelines based upon your vibration, which essentially means you have to be really, really mindful of your thoughts, your intentions, your emotions, because as I've explained in previous videos, you can essentially see that there's like a frame of a moment in time. And we experience our world as, a moving frame, almost like a movie, if you will. But essentially, if you slow it down, it's a frame, then it's a frame of an experience. And these would be like snapshots in a movie reel. So it's a frame, and then it's another frame, and it's another frame. But there's another probable future, right? And that could be a whole nother movie that's up here. That's a frame and another frame and another frame. Oh, but wait, if you have a lower frequency, the frame could be down here. It's a frame and another frame and another frame. So in this 0 point, depending upon your intention, your thought, your frequency at which you're vibrating, can mean that you stay on that same stream of a timeline, or you bump to another timeline that has a higher, sort of frequency outcome, or a lower time that has a lower frequency outcome. So it very much depends upon you, and that explains why your outer world will always reflect your inner world, because it has everything to do with your frequency and the frequency of the molecules and the subatomic particles within your energy body and therefore your physical body. So then the third topic that has to do with the quantum mechanics, or quantum kind of unified field, had to do with the concept of downloading information. And I want to say, a couple weeks ago, I shared a video that had to do with 5 different ways that you can download data from the unified field or the morphogenic field. And they were based upon how I've been able to experience it. I'm sure there's other ways, but those are the ones that I personally have experienced. So what he says about this is that each moment of time is an avalanche of data flowing through the field. Beings download the data based upon vibrational matches in tone and intention to the vibrational tone of the data/energy. The key unlocks, I probably typed this wrong. So essentially the gist of it is that when you get the right vibrational tone, it acts like a key, if you will, and you're essentially unlocking the information. It's like unlocking a door. So let's just say that there's like a door, a door to pass through, and the only way to open that door is through your vibration and your frequency, and essentially your frequency has to match the frequency of the door in order to open that door and get that information. That's essentially what's implied in that last sentence. I didn't type it down very well from my notes, so the key, as it were, the information as a match of vibration occurs. So that sounds muddled, but that's essentially the intention of what he was saying as I remember it. Yeah, so essentially, again, it has to do with vibrational frequency. And already in the unified field, the morphogenic field, source field, exists everything that has ever happened, past, present, future. Every action that's ever happened has been recorded. Every innovation that has happened or will happen is already out there. It's just a matter of tuning into it with your vibrational frequency. And when you have the right sort of match, then you have the ability to sort of get access to the information, and the information is flowing in the field all the time. The question is whether or not you're sort of tuning into it consciously, because even if your body's receiving it, there's receiving it, and there's consciously knowing that you're receiving it and tapping into it. And then being able to make sense of it, so oftentimes the information comes in energy. So it's not like somebody's knocking you on your head saying, hey, listen to this. I have an idea, so it's coming in the form of energy packets, which are at a certain vibrational frequency. And then you essentially, like within your body structure, within your central nervous system and your brain structure, are starting to make sense of that energy and turn it into energy that your consciousness can then make sense of and consume. And so that's essentially what's happening. So anyway, those were, again, 3 different information points that have to do with relating ascension to the quantum field or quantum mechanics, because again, ascension is very much about increasing consciousness. Oftentimes that kind of goes along with the concept of spirituality, or it can, but it's really about ascending your consciousness. And when you're doing that, having knowledge of the mechanics of how that's happening is so important, because it gives you so much more, freedom and mastery around being able to ascend your consciousness more. By understanding that you're the master of it. It's all about how you are thinking and feeling. And so if you can consciously control more of your vibrational frequency, keep them, at a high vibrational frequency, you'll be able to create those timelines that, you're really hoping to create, and you're creating visions around. So with that, I hope, that was kind of a lengthy session today, but I hope this, again, adds another point to your data point to help you with the ascension process. And again, if this content resonates with you, I would encourage you to, give it a thumbs up, share it with others who you think might benefit from this. And, I'm here to pass on my learnings, as I'm getting them, so that you can benefit from them as well, because it's really free information for everybody. So with that, I love you and have a great rest of your day. Bye.